right, hey Sam, back with you here. Again, we're midday on Tuesday, February 27th, and we are finishing up here with the last coin that was voted on amongst members here. This is ICX icon to Bitcoin. Now, we've done this coin before, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time here over on the left side of it. But just to be consistent here, we'll come over here to CoinGecko, where I like to suggest that you go, if you want to do a little research on a coin here, you can see it's only been around for 5 months, and we're already at 1.5 billion in market cap. Nice scoring here at 60% for a coin that's relatively new to the marketplace at only 5 months here. All good scoring across the board here, and nice market cap. Looking down here, bulk of it is traded to Bitcoin, and then the vast majority, almost 70%, it's traded on Binance. So of course that's where we're going to look at it. So we'll come over here, and again, we've done this coin before here, where we had this very clear, just this beautifully technical 5-wave structure here. The to the tick wicking here of the 1 and the 4 gave us that clean 5. So as we would with any 5-wave structure, we're simply going to pull from low to high and look for those high probability zones for a second. So if I get that right on there. Well, interestingly, or perhaps it's no surprise here, we're just holding here right in the golden zone, right? Three times we've tapped at it. Now, there is a line of thinking that the more times you bang on that kind of support, the more likely you are to break it, and that may very well be what we're seeing here. There's a reasonable case to be made here that there's one more push down, which would give us this kind of a thing. If we're going to break it here, well, then we've got to be aware of the fact that wherever we pivot here, we're going to be, well, either way, we're going to be running into resistance on the way back. But a break there means algos are going to flip. And so if we were to go to the 786 for the 2, which would be very much in the norm, if we were going to pull there, then we're going to run into this, pardon me, it would be right here, the 50 and the 618 on the way back up. So we got to know that that's there and know that we're going to hit resistance here and here. If we can get through it, then the potential is certainly there for this to go up and challenge the old high and go far beyond that. It certainly is the potential. So I know if my members are interested in a review of this coin, they want to be over here on the hard right edge and see, are we close to a pivot? Well, we're going to have to dig down a little bit more to see whether or not. I mean, you could certainly make the case that you could be a buyer here with a very tight stop. You're so close to the 65 that I don't know that's not something that I would likely do. So there's 2 ways to go here. One is to wait for the pivot, look for the reaction, and then take the first retracement, right? That would be the safer way to do it, which is just one, probably my bread and butter trade here. We get a pivot. If we come off of that in 5, the trade is to take the 2, looking for the 3. That's the safer way to do it. That's the safer way to do it. It has some advantages. Right, we have the high probability zone for a second. We're closer to the pivot, so we can really be precise about the risk reward. And if we're going for the 3rd, we're going to have the best risk reward dynamics there because of our clear exit point, where we know where we're wrong. That this, whatever happens down here ends up being not the pivot. If we don't get a higher low, then we're wrong, right? And then this thing could just roll right over and head lower. But you're set up. That's the best, some of the best odds you're going to find because of how close the invalidation point is, as opposed to trading into a 4, which can, have a wider range. For the 2, if we're buying the 50, stop on the other side of the 65. That if you took another shot at it, allowing for it to go to the 786, then your stop's on the pivot. This is where I like to make my money, right in here, shopping for the 2s, looking for the 3s, right? And if you get the 4, 5, that's just a little bonus. All right, well, let's dig down in here, because I know that's what members are interested in, since we've done the larger degree several times in review. So if we come down, so let me clear this up here so it's a little easier to see. So we can take this off. We know we're sitting right in the golden zone here. Looks like we're going down. We had a slight break here. So you could make the case that with that slight break, algos have already flipped. That's very modest here. But let's see if we can dial in and get a hard pivot here, at least a technical pivot. So for those that are looking to try and buy the turn and try and catch the low, I wouldn't call it a falling knife, but certainly we have a series of of lower highs and potentially here now lower lows. So I'm here on a 4 hour. Let's just see if we can dial in from this level here. So if I take the swing high here down to the proposed A wave here. So we'll again, it's interestingly, this was just, we showed this last time on NEO as well, which I just did. So A wave goes right to the golden zone, right to the 618. Reaction, boom, there's the B doesn't quite get to the 50, gets right to the Vegas wave, and then we've rolled over here, and would imply that if we're going to get a clear 3-wave correction here with the kind of subdivision we want to see, that we've got the quick abrupt move down for the A wave, we get the little 3-wave into the B, it's technical, and now are we going to finish with a C wave that gives us nice clear 5 legs. So we can see definitely got divergence here. So if this is our A wave here, it may end up being our third for all we know. But right now we can see that this was the strongest move down. So we can see that if we're going to get new lows here, we clearly have the definition of classic divergence here. So we would have lower price here, but not being matched by a lower low in the oscillator. So that sets up the scenario. You can see here now on the 4 hour, the RSI is coming, approaching 30, getting closer here. Now, that's why those are secondary, right? So look at the last time we got here. We got all the way up to almost to the 70 and rolled over, but that wasn't much of a trade. So that's why I go here last, not first. Just a reminder. Okay, looking here. What do we get? So I've got potentially a 1, 2. Have I overlapped? Yeah, I have. So I have a diagonal. So I'd be finishing with an ending diagonal, which found in the C wave makes perfect sense. So can we hold here? Is there another push down? We know from this swing high to swing low, if this is the front run, a pretty aggressive front run here on the 50, that target is down here, right, the negative 23. So we already have a confluence zone down here that would support technically the idea of the 65 breaking, coming down here for a 2. Algos get their target here. From an Elliott perspective, we'd have a deep 2, but certainly technically valid. Interesting, right? So always good to look left. So if we see this pivot here, right on the 786, maybe. Look what happened last time, right? So pivot, reaction. Here you had it again, not quite on to the tick. But just something to keep in mind. You always want to look left and see if you can find an area where prior resistance could set you up for additional support. So if this is going to break, well, additionally, we could do something. We could, this looks like there's a pretty clear channel here. So if we work down to that 4, even if you went off the 1, which you might, then you might draw this over a little bit here. So we've got this zone here where if this is going to break, and it looks like it's threatening right now as I'm recording it, there's a likely target for that, which would complete with nice symmetry here to give us our second, complete the C wave, and give us our 5th. Right? It'd be kind of. That might be too much for that 5th. We'll have to check that. See, let's just do a quick check on this. Let me zoom in here, check that 3rd relative to the 1st. So if I look at this, you got to do this kind of detailed work if you're going to approach it with an Elliott mindset. If I take the length of the 1 projected from the 2, you can see, well, let me pull it over so you can see it. See, we don't quite get 100% the length of the 1. We're just shy, right? So the 65 stalls it. So we don't quite have 100% the length of the 1. So we got to be careful about the 5th getting longer than the 3rd. So you would do the same thing. So we take the length of the 3rd projected from the 4th and put that right on there. So if we're going to go down to these targets here, we got to be careful about that because that would be 100% the length of the 3rd, and we don't want that 3rd to be the longest one. So we've got a pretty solid technical zone down here to keep our eye on, but right now we're just getting lower low, and we're stalling here. So this is a threat to the 65 to try and break it. We'll see if we do it, but does that look like a place to be a buyer? I might wait for that. Just it's grinding lower here to threaten the 65. The good buy would be on the front of the 618. Now we're pushing that low as a potential break. I would not be aggressively buying there myself, right? But others might differ with me. So I know I've got this zone down here, but let's dig down a little bit deeper. Let's go down to the 1 hour, see if there's any help here. Well, if we come here now, look at it. No, not dramatically. I can sort of tighten these up here as you change time zones. It's very common that you'll need to tighten that up. Just any charting package is pretty much going to do that to you. Okay, so there's that potentially setting up here for our 3 and our 4. So if I look relative to the length of the 3, looking for the 4, we'll see here we are right to the 50, right, as we've seen. So again, just algos everywhere, right? So here's that target from the length of the 3 projected from the 4, perfect front run on the 50, and that target is down here, right? So you can see that from that 50, that target is here. So that might, that's interesting because that could set us up for that third not going to the shortest. And so that's a contender right here because down here, here's 100% of it. So if we were to pivot here, if algos are going to work off the length of this swing, this would be a clear indication that they sold it there, and here's their target here. So that could be a setup that makes sense. But we got to dig in a little more. So let me declutter the chart here so you can see it. We know we're right in the golden zone. We know we've got all this stuff down here. I just want to clean up the chart so it doesn't get hard for you to follow what I'm trying to show you here. So here, 1, 2, 3, it's kind of a funky 4, but you can carve 3 out of it. We know it's technical, right? So you could say, Elliott wave, it's crazy shit. Here, we could just do that, right? So we know we've got that. So hard to argue with that, right? There's their target. Okay, so let's dig in a little bit deeper because we might have a 1, 2, 3. So we got to go down to the 15-minute, which my guess is that's what I've got members doing. They're trying to maybe day trade this. So here's that front run on the 50. So what could we have here? This could be 1, 2. We'll have to look here. That looks like that might go deep. So we might have 3 down here. So let's measure it. So if we take our alternate price projection tool from our pivot, this certainly could play as a 1, 2. Well, there's the 2. All right. Well, that's interesting. So now I can, given that information, now I can take my Elliott tool and looking for an impulse and go 1, 2, makes sense. Deep 2, right? 2 like a B can be 786. Looks like it likely. It could be 618. We'll go back and measure that. But look at this, right? To the tick, maybe a tick off. There's the highest probability zone for a third, right there. What do we do? All right, so you can see it right here. Let's go down here. That's our 5. So potentially this is our 4. What I was trying to do is draw this little box here. So we can see we've got this high probability zone for our third, and we just tap it and react. With that's a shallow 4, no question about it. But if we're trying to dig in down here on a 15-minute, so I might also just check this here because that looked interesting. So yep, 786. Right here's the longer term targets. So let's take that off because we know we've got good odds that we've got a 1, 2, 3, shallow 4, right? The harder the trend, the more shallow likely the 4 is going to be. So if I look at the length of the third here, where we think we've got a good technical low on the third, 4, well, there's the 23.6, right? So, that's not uncommon. In fact, that's high probability zone in a trending market between the 23.6 and the 38. Vegas wave right there, little resistance, boom, down it goes. So where could we be in this count? So if we look here, and I'll declutter a little bit. So I've got potentially a 1, 2, 3, 4. Looks like maybe an extension in the 5th. So if I look again, I can make this case that maybe I've got a 1, 2, 3, 4. So we could be zeroing in on a good area here to be looking for confluence. Let me take that down, lower the degree, get a different color. We know that's a contender for our third. So do I have 3, 4 going into the 5th? Well, let's check it. Same thing. Doesn't matter the time frame. Doesn't matter the asset. Doesn't matter. It's the same thing every time. So can we get a 3, 4, 5 down here? Well, let's take a look. So potentially there's my 1. Here's my 4th potentially, right? So we've got a fresh low here. Let's measure it out, right? Just like we would. So here's the 2 to the 3, right? 38 to the tick. So we get a nice little cluster down here. 38 to the tick. What else could we do? We could take the alternate price tool and look at the length of the 1 projected from the 4. Well, here's 100%. So now I'm getting a nice confluence zone down here. There's 100% common target for the 5th relative to the length of the 1 projected from the 4. So the 5th wave equaling the first wave. So I've got a lot of things setting up here, right? So if you're trying to be a a day trader and dig in here trying to get that hard low, you've got a spot here where you've got pretty juicy confluence. Right? That could be your pivot, but so that, that's not a place to be overly aggressive in terms of the amount of size, because you're trying to pick the absolute pivot low down to the 15-minute. So not a place to be overly aggressive. But, well, let me phrase it this way. If you're trying to trade into the larger trend, if we go all the way back out to the 4-hour, you wouldn't want to put 100% of your position right here. There's no reason to take that much risk, right? You've got, yes, we have those huge targets up there. Let's back out and say, okay, let's see if that makes sense. So yeah, if this is a 1 and we're trying to dial in here for the 2, well, you got huge upside here. So, let me phrase it this way. I would not go overly heavy on the size there, because there's going to be so many opportunities. Even if we do pivot there, there's so much opportunity to add as you go here, because these are going to be way up here. Right? If this is really going to go and we're going to get a 5-wave count, no reason to be overly aggressive there. Even if I go down to the 1 hour, you're just trying to get on board there, get positioned. So if you get a decent move off of that, then you're working with house money. So then lots of opportunity, because even if you do get this as the pivot, there's going to be a 1-2, most likely, right? So that comes. So unless you're just trying to, get a little pop here as a swing trade here, and you're comfortable going heavy on that, I would tell you that's one to just be, modest on the size here. See if you get the clean 5 to confirm that low, and then here you could go a little bit bigger, but you've already made some money off of this one. So even if you took a partial profit here on the anticipation that the 2 will come, the retracement of that, the correction, retracement, profit taking, however you want to think of it, there's a very high probability that comes, because those that buy it here, if it rolls over at all, there'll be stops getting hit, profit being taken. That's what creates it. So greed, fear. Right? That's what we're looking for. So I'm not saying it's not a good idea to dig all the way down to the 15-minute, try and get that absolute, precise entry point, that precision technical trade. I'm all for it. But just be reasonable with the risk there, because you're trying to pick the absolute low. Right? Not the easiest thing to do, right? So you might get it, but then look for it to confirm. If you get a pivot there, you have to confirm it, because that low needs to be tested. So that's what the 2 does. It's a test. It's a challenge to that low. So if it holds, then what do we get? Higher low, right? Now you have the makings. Just the makings of a trend. Can we get 5 waves out of there? Can we get a series of higher highs and higher lows, which is the definition of a trend? Right now, we got lower lows. We're trying to pick the turn. I mean, I'm all for it. I like the precision trading, but just be reasonable about the risks there. When you understand what you're trying to do, you're trying to pick the pivot low, right? And a lot of people tell you just don't need to do it. You don't need to do that. Take the 2. Right? Because look, if you take the 2 here, well, you know where you're wrong. See, if this is the pivot, right, relative to the potential return, right? You see, maybe if I do it visually, right? You get the idea here. Well, if you're wrong here, modest loss, small loser. If you're right, that risk reward is sexy, right? That's what you're looking for. Can I get in? Can I find an on-ramp working off a technical pivot with a reasonable amount of risk and enough reward to offset the risk that I'm taking by exposing my capital in the market? Right? Just visually, that looks pretty good. That's the name of the game, guys. All right, I'll wrap it there.